Welcome to our latest installment of Get Mo Wine here in Modesto, California. Today I am so excited because it's Get Mo Wine and Cheese, and to really bring this to life, we are here in O'Brien's Market at Dale and Pellendale in Modesto. It's live today. We're here with the store open with customers in the background and all kinds of background sounds. So if you hear something going on, that's the reason why. And today, to bring Get Mo Wine and Cheese to life, I'm joined by Joe Baird, the cheesemonger here at O'Brien's Market, and Tom Bender, the wine steward extraordinaire. And we're going to be talking about all the things to think about with wine and cheese pairing. Now, you know me, and you know that my only rule for wine and food pairing is that any wine with food is better than no wine with food. But as you've heard me say before, if you want to turn that good pairing into a great pairing, there are certain guidelines that you should pay attention to. And when it comes to wine and cheese pairing, there's two guidelines we're going to be focusing on. The first is about the style of the cheese. And it's about how creamy or how hard the cheese is. So with creamier cheeses, softer cheeses, the rule of thumb, the guideline is go with higher acid, lower tannin wines. The creamier the cheese, the higher the acid, the lower the tannin. The harder the cheese, that's where you can go with higher tannin and lower acid. And if you like the stinkier cheeses, and if you do, you know what I'm talking about, the stinkier the cheese, the sweeter the wine is the guideline to go with. And so, Joe, I'm going to turn it over to you. You've selected a wonderful array of cheeses for us to think about today. Why don't you tell us what you have?
All right, thank you. So today we're going to start with our first cheese. We're going from mildest to, you'll see the evolution, mildest to hardest in strength. But today this is, our first cheese is Nicolau Farms. This is here, a small artisan cheese producer here in Modesto. A goat cheese farmer. They have about a couple hundred goats, a few cows, and this is a mild, classic, what the French call a chèvre cheese. Chèvre meaning goat, and this is a. He makes a variety of cheeses. This happens to be his fresh cheese, only about a couple days old. Really, he makes the cheese, the curds, and then puts it in a cheesecloth and drains the butter fat from it and a lot of the excess moisture. And then, so this is a cheese that you could use for salads. You can make desserts with it. It's a great, versatile cheese that is a good gateway goat cheese.
Thank you, Joe. And Tom, when I think about goat's milk cheeses, oftentimes I think about sort of a higher acid cheese. And with higher acid cheeses, it's nice to show some higher acid wines. And since this is a creamier style cheese, we're going to go with that guideline of sort of higher acid, lower tannin. So what have you found? You've picked a couple spectacular wine suggestions for this.
Well, keeping that in mind, the higher acid wines, you immediately think of a Sauvignon Blanc, dry, crisp style. And then the other one being a red that's a little higher in acid, that being Barbera. And low tannins, as we were talking about. And I picked these two because they have a local connection. They're both from Murphy's, California. Both wineries are up in Calaveras County. A great destination. You want to get a picnic basket here at O'Brien's and head on up to the Gold Country. These are two wineries that you should visit. And Matt Hatcher, being a local Modesto winemaker, and Scott Clan from Newsom Harlow has been in the area for, decades now making wine. These are both very owner-operated wineries up in that area, and I think they match real well with the goat cheese because of their brightness. And I think of warming a baguette, spreading the goat cheese, and then trying one or both of these wines because they'll really offset the acidity and match it extremely well. Barbera's become a foothill signature grape that has really prospered in the last decade or so, and Sauvignon Blanc does very well up there as well. So those are where I went.
So a great example, Tom, of how you don't have to be making wine in Modesto to be a Modestan winemaker.
Exactly.
And so Matt Hatcher up in the Sierra foothills now. All right, thank you for that. So Joe, what's our second cheese today?
Second cheese is Steit Gouda. This is a farmstead cheese, which means that it's made on their farm from their herd of cows. This is made by the Stite family. Anastasia Stite is the cheesemaker. Her father, Rick Stite, and Ann Sally are the farmers, the dairy owners. And they specialize in Gouda. Her father, Rick Stite, is from the Netherlands, and they're producing one of the only raw milk Goudas in California.
And in the Modesto area.
And this is actually from Escalon, which is our neighboring town. But they produce one of the only raw milk Goudas made in California. And the first competition they entered, they took all golds for 4 cheeses. So this is a special cheese because remember, it's farmstead. It's made with passion and pride, multi-generational dairy family.
Mm-hmm. And Joe, my understanding is when you're working with a raw milk cheese, you tend to have a more alkaline style cheese as opposed to an acidic cheese. And so here we would have a little bit lower acid in the cheese, which is going to go well with lower acid wines. We also have a little bit firmer texture, even though it's not what I'd call a hard cheese. It's still going to melt in your mouth, but it's going to be a little chewier. And so, Tom, we're looking for wines that might have a little more body to them, but still maybe a good, nice acid character to them as well.
And that's why I went with a sparkling wine and then a Viognier. The Viognier is from one of our local producers, that being the McManus family, which is just over the river, you might say, like the cheese in Ripon. And their Viognier is a big medal winner. And I picked out Viognier because it's got some floral characteristics to it. It's not oaked, it's medium acid. It's got a richness that I think would work well with the cheeses. And then the sparkling wine, Jay is very connected to our Gallo family here in Modesto. And it's another example of somebody local utilizing fruit from out of the area. And this Jay is from Sonoma County, if I'm not mistaken. And you think that maybe a sparkling wine would have a little too much acid in it, but to do a rosé, you've got the fruitiness from the red fruit, and it kind of offsets the acidity that you might expect in a sparkling wine. And I would think would work really, really well with the cheese.
Tom, my mouth is watering right now. So we've gone from a classic goat chèvre to a Gouda style raw milk. Joe, what are you going to finish us off with today?
One of my all-time favorites. This is another farmstead cheese like the other two. This is Fiscalini Old World Cheddar. This is also a raw milk cheese, which is aged over 60 days by U.S. law. This is an English-style cheddar, so they wrap it in cheesecloth and age it for about 18 months. Farmstead, meaning that it's from their herd of cows, on their dairy. They have a variety of Swiss brown cows and Holsteins, and what that does, each cow produces a different style of milk, butterfat flavor. So this cheese was voted 3-time best cheddar in the world in England, where cheddar comes from. It was a big deal, and so it's got pineapple notes. It's slightly crumbly, citrusy, a nice tang to it. What we call sharp. Has that bite that hits you right in the back of the cheeks back there, and this is you can find this here at O'Brien's, all 3 of our locations.
And that sharpness that you're referring to, Joe, a lot of times when I'm tasting cheese, it almost seems like it's a type of saltiness to me. And yet, when it's aged like this, there's also little sugar crystals that have formed. And so you get that really interesting sort of sweet, salty character. And Tom, that's what's really going to allow us to put this with a wine that maybe has more tannin to it. With a white wine, that might mean a barrel fermented wine, like a barrel fermented Chardonnay. Exactly. And with a red wine, a grape variety that's higher in tannin. So what have you got for us today?
Well, we upped the ante on the cheese, so we upped the ante on the wines, and we've got the Matt Bruno Chardonnay, which is another local individual sourcing grapes, in this case from the Carneros region, very famous region for Chardonnay up in Sonoma, Napa counties, and barrel fermented, and it's got that richness that you want to tackle the Fiscalini cheese. And then on the red, I went with the local John Monich, who has Silkwood, been doing it for decades, and this is his Cabernet Syrah blend. And it's not high in tannins, but it's got the tannins you're looking for to kind of cut through the richness maybe of the cheese and such. Syrah, I love Syrah. It's just got that, you know, the peppery spice notes to it that would work real well with the cheese, and then you throw some Cabernet in there and you can't lose. So that's why I went with, again, a local wine, vineyards in Stanislaus County, and that should work real well with the cheese.
Well, no, I love the idea of this red wine, which, you know, oftentimes people might be drinking it and think, ooh, this is a fairly, you know, full-bodied tannic wine. But in this instance, you pair it with the cheese, and the cheese helps to bring that tannin down.
Absolutely.
And that's a wonderful aspect of wine and food pairing.
And you could go with, you know, a cab if you wanted to, if you want something that's going to have a little more tannins behind it. Syrah, as I mentioned, it's got that spice and a little bit of earthiness that I think would work well with the cheeses too.
So from a guideline standpoint, we've handled the creamier cheeses with the higher acid and lower tannin wines. We've handled the firmer cheese with the higher tannin, lower acid wines. We're not showing you a stinky cheese today, but Joe, what would you put in the category of stinky cheeses? Because you sell quite a few of them here.
Yeah, the washed rind family is what we call stinky cheeses. Those can range in different types of milks, different styles of cheeses, and what they are is they're a cheese that's been washed or bathed in a solution that creates a certain bacteria to grow, makes it more funky, stinky, and cheeses like Époisse from France. Limburger is one of the most famous cheeses, you know, but a lot of those get a bad reputation where, you know, a lot of bark and not so much bite. One of my favorite categories of cheese because they're just very meaty and hearty.
Mm-hmm. And the blue cheese family would fall into that too.
Definitely, that would be the most intense style of cheese because of its acidity and its that earthy, that mold kind of penicillium that we get in there tends to really knock your socks off.
Well, it can also make a red wine, a dry red wine, taste very metallic.
But very metallic.
Yeah, and so the guideline for stinkier cheeses, Tom, was let's go with sweeter wines. So with Époisse and Munster and those types of things. We've got a late harvest muscat here, but you've got other selections in your store as well.
We do. You know, I think of some of those stinky cheeses being at the end of the meal. So why not go with a port or late harvest Zinfandel or something with some oomph? And the two that you put out, one is from Chatham up in Calaveras County, and then the other is St. Amant Vineyards up in Lodi area. And they're both, I think, terrific wines to do with very heavy-duty cheeses.
But you also offer French sauternes, you've got muscat dessert wines, you've got ports, you've got quite an array of sweet wines to go with this. And half bottles too, which is a fantastic size to be able to take on a picnic with you, right? Absolutely. And speaking of picnics, I'm sure that you will be able to see a lot of the video of the O'Brien's Market here, showing you the wonderful service deli that's here, Joe's cheese counter, which is the best in our area and probably the Bay Area as well. It's an absolutely amazing thing to travel to. Tom's wine section, we're here in the kind of the vintage, older vintage, higher value area, but he's also got hundreds and hundreds of wines of all price ranges and styles. And Tom, you're here on what days to be able to assist folks?
Monday, Thursdays, and Fridays. Okay. And hopefully we'll get back to tasting wines here as we move down the road. Yep. And I invite everybody to come in. We'll set the hours. Usually they're Thursday evenings and Friday and Saturday tastings, and look forward to seeing you soon.
And Joe, you're here which days?
I'm usually here Sunday through Thursday, 9 to 6.
But if people call in their orders ahead of time, they'll be here ready for them, ready to go. You've got amazing cheese platters,
yeah, we make platters,
meat and cheese platters.
One-stop shop. Yeah, you give us about a 24-hour notice on any of our orders, and they'll be ready for you to pick up that next day.
And that's O'Brien's Market here on Pell and Dale. And Dale, the phone number here, guys, would be
209-545-8100.
And not to overlook the amazing farm stands that we have in this area. Come to O'Brien's, pick up all the things, your breads, your meats, your cheeses, things like that. And then if you'd like to go and get your fresh produce at one of our farm stands, Roden Farms is just down the road from here. They're an amazing supporter of Visit Modesto. And you can stop by there after stopping by here on your way up to the Sierra foothills. How about, what a perfect day that would be, eh? For all of us at Visit Modesto, this has been Get Mo Wine and Cheese, and we thank you for watching.